This is Talk is Sheep, the official podcast of the Wild Sheep Society BC, brought to you by Sitka Game. Come along as we bring conversations that matter to you into the high alpine. Well, gentlemen, back at the saddle, Talk is Sheep. We got Sam Cunningham and Glen Landrus, all old pros on the podcast here now. So, gentlemen, welcome back. Good to see you both.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, good to be on again.
Awesome. So, Sam Cunningham, president of TBS. I believe you're still president of Texas Bighorn Society. Is that correct, Sam?
Yes. Would you like to be president of TBS?
I would not. I could tell you that I would not do half the darn job that you've done. So,
if anybody listening out there would like to be president of TBS, please contact me.
My understanding,
it's been fun. It's just, nobody else wants to step up for now. I think we got someone coming in next year.
Awesome. Well, it's a tough role to fill, and I'll tell you, there's been some really big plays going on in Texas these past couple of years, and there's been one guy at the head of the presidency there, and I know it's a team. Don't get me wrong, I fully respect that, but no, it's great, Sam. I can't wait to catch up on the great work that you've been doing there with the TBS crew, and then also just to point out to our listeners that you're also on the board of directors of the Wild Sheep Foundation. So as if your full-time conservation volunteer job wasn't enough, you took on another role. And I've been talking to Chair Landrus there, and you've been smashing it on the board of directors of the Wild Sheep Foundation too. So really, really excited about you being on there and the great work you're doing there as well.
Well, thank you.
Awesome. And Glen Landrus, the chairman of the Wild Sheep Foundation, in his 9th year of the board of directors of the Wild Sheep Foundation, and no stranger to the conservation world. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks. Good to be on here and talking with you fine two gentlemen. See if I can take some notes and learn something tonight.
I understand you got a big trip planned. Are you allowed to talk about that on the air? Is that a secret?
Oh, yeah, you bet. I mean, hopefully I'll be back by the time this rolls out. I'm not sure what your runway is before you get this on the airwaves. So at least I'll be back here in the homeland, or they'll be shipping my body back here to the homeland, I guess. But no, I'm headed tomorrow night. Start my adventure headed to Pakistan to hunt Sind ibex.
Unbelievable. So the Bailey Landrus connection is Landrus is living up to his name in the bargain. There's nowhere near what the Bailey does, but pretty exciting trip, man. That's a huge venture. Pakistan, you said.
Yes. Yeah. I'm ready to get in, and I've talked about it on a prior podcast with you. Just get in and pursue some of these different species of ibex around the world. And for me personally, the Sind ibex, I think are just the coolest looking. And so it's been on my radar for a couple of years now, since Brian was over there with one of our hunters, and I've been talking about it long enough. And although there were some obstacles this last week that just about derailed it, take off. I'm going to drive to Seattle tomorrow after work and depart there, and 12-hour flight to Istanbul in Turkey, a few hour layover there, and then I think a 5-hour flight to Islamabad, and then clear customs and catch a flight to Karachi down on the southwestern coast. And then it's about a 4-hour adventure of a drive from there to our hunting area. So be a bit of a rough, whatever that adds up to, 30 hours or so, but I'm really looking forward to it. I haven't anticipated a hunt like this for a long time, so I'm pretty pumped.
Well, you probably got one of those big lie flat beds and the suites and Turkish Airlines and stuff, so you're probably going to be living the high life on the way over there anyway. So
you have no idea the downgrade I did for my airfare.
My understanding, like Tajikistan and a lot of those countries there, like the drive's the worst part. Like you got the 16, 18-hour flight over there, but then you drive for 10 or 12 or 14 hours. 4 hours out of Karachi's that's not too bad.
No, it's not going to be too bad. And yes, I've experienced that in Mongolia when we flew up to actually the city of Altai, and then we had a 10-hour Russian van drive. The first 40 minutes or something was, we're actually on a paved road full of potholes, and we met a few cars, then we turned off of that and never met another car for 9 hours.
Wow.
So yes, that is the reputation of some of those adventures over there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, very cool. I can't wait to hear when you get back about the trip and yeah, just the adventures that you're going on. It's really cool. So I know you've been overseas, obviously you just mentioned Mongolia. You've been over with some hunters through Bailey and Landrus, but this is your first international hunt for yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, outside of Africa, yeah, I've been to Zimbabwe for myself, but to Central Asia, this is it.
Are you going to do any video work on this? Are you
I'm taking it's a former student of mine. I don't know. I think he just turned 22 or 23. He started guiding for us last year. His mom teaches at the same school that I do. He's going through an electrical apprenticeship program. So we're leaving and we'll be gone over Christmas. So it's kind of hard to find someone. For me, that's the window. I'm not excited to be away from my family over Christmas, but that's the window that I could go. The season for send is essentially September 1 to March 31. And anyway, so I'm going to take, his name's Ryan. He's he's a great kid and I'm really looking forward to it. So I told him, I'm like, man, all you got to do is make sure that red light is on that recorder and all is good. So yeah, we'll see. I don't do much video editing anymore, but we should take a ton of pictures and video and we'll see what happens from there.
right on? Well, I can't wait to hear all about it. So, pretty epic feat that's just gone on here the last couple months. So, I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm just going to hand it right over to you, Sam. Texas Bighorn Society, in conjunction with the Wild Sheep Foundation, has done an epic transplant, and we just don't get to see these sort of things anymore in our world. With all the disease work and all the issues we've had, it's just so few and far between that we can have an incredible success story like this. And we, Glenn, you always as chair talk about epic shit, and it doesn't get any more epic shitter than this, in my opinion. So, I just want to hear all about it, Sam. I just lay the groundwork for us, sort of what you guys did, how it all came about, and I want to hear everything about it.
Okay. In Texas, we're not immune to the disease problems that all sheep ranges have throughout the West. We were for a while, and then when it showed up with a vengeance. We have very little domestic sheep production down where our desert bighorns are. Whereas, most of the other states and provinces have that domestic sheep exposure for transmission of Movi and the big doffs with that. In Texas, we have the aoudad, and we have tons of aoudad, and they are what are transmitting the Mycoplasma ovipneumoniae to our wild sheep. There is kind of tongue in cheek. Some people have described our aoudad problem as the feral hogs of the desert, and they have the same kind of population dynamics. It's a logarithmic issue and not a linear issue. And so they're just taking over. They're ruining habitat. They're spreading disease, and that's what's caused caused all of our die-offs down there. Done some recent surveys to give you a little background on the aoudad of all of the mountain ranges in Texas, and 100% of the mountain ranges have aoudad. So they landed and sampled a bunch of those animals, and there was the presence of Movi in 100% of our mountain ranges in Texas through the aoudad. Some ranges with the prevalence as high as 86%. So that's been a big problem. We have it's Elephant Mountain Wildlife Management Area. It's kind of a sky island mountain, and that's been our source herd. And so once the population on Elephant Mountain gets up to carrying capacity, pull animals off and translocate them to other mountain ranges in Texas. And that's kind of how we've populated all those different mountain ranges in Texas. Around Elephant Mountain are a bunch of private ranches, and there are aoudad on all of those ranches. There's aoudad on the public lands. They foot survey and aerial gun that Elephant Mountain Wildlife Management Area, our source herd, to try to keep those aoudad out. but it's just kind of a matter of time. A few months ago, they were surveying, they saw 10 aoudad, killed 10 of them, 7 of them tested positive for Movi. So we've got to do something. And so there is one, other than Elephant Mountain, there is one mountain range in Texas that doesn't have Movi. In fact, it doesn't even have any aoudad, and that's the Franklin Mountains outside of El Paso. The Franklin Mountains are surrounded on 3 sides almost. The southern end of them is surrounded by 3 sides by the city of El Paso. So those mountain ranges go right down into town. And there's a Franklin Mountain State Park up in those mountains, and it's a very busy park. They have like 80,000 visitors a year. Lots of bicycles, hikers, campers, a lot of public use of that state park. So Forlon Hernandez and our Texas Parks and Wildlife colleagues looked at that mountain range, did a bunch of aerial surveys, a bunch of foot surveys, habitat evaluation, everything. And historically, the Franklin Mountains had sheep 7,500 years ago, but there haven't been any in there in a long time. And there are no aoudad, and because it's a state park, there won't be any aoudad because they're an exotic invasive species, and they're not allowed in our state parks. So that was identified as, hey, this is maybe not just a good place, but maybe our last good place or only good place to try to establish a second disease-free source herd. So that's kind of how that mountain range was selected, and sort of some background on why we needed to get this done and why we needed to get it done pretty quickly.
Sam, just to give our listeners a little bit of perspective, how many bighorn sheep are in the state of Texas, and maybe just a real brief historical background, and then how many aoudad? Because I know there's a freaking ton of them, but give us a frame of reference so people understand the magnitude.
Historically, back in the 1800s, there was about 1,500 desert bighorn sheep in Texas. And then after that region, the Trans-Pecos region down there was settled, and they brought in domestic livestock, and there was unregulated hunting, and they put up net fences and started mining, and just all that kind of stuff. Really had a negative impact on not just the habitat, but also on the sheep population. And so those numbers continued to drop, and finally they were completely extirpated by 1959 or 1960. So we went from 1,500 to 0. Then tried a couple of different translocations from Arizona into our Black Gap WMA. Those failed pretty miserably, lost only 100% of it from predation. Then the state of Texas, the legislature reached out to it was a famous trauma surgeon in Houston named Dr. Red Duke, and challenged him to, hey, you need to find some like-minded individuals and get together and start something to try to help with getting sheep, the desert bighorn, restored to Texas. So he was our first founding president of the Texas Bighorn Society, and that was in 1982. And so since then, we've brought in sheep from Arizona, Nevada, Utah, mainly those places. And so just kind of chipping away and building, a bigger herd. 5 or 6 years ago, we were back up to historic numbers, around 12 to 1,500. 3 years ago, we were at 1,200. 2 years ago, we were at 800. Last year, we were less than 400. They just finished some surveys recently, and I don't know what those numbers are, but they're not still in that deep nosedive that they were for those 3 years.
Sam, is it confirmed, or suspected at least, that it's predominantly disease?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, that is alarming, and we've talked about this before, but I didn't realize how dire that was. Texas is further complicated by the fact that there's so much private land. Is it 97%? Is that the number we're dealing with?
Yeah.
So
yes, sir. 97% privately held land.
So does that, obviously that hinders things, because there's this aoudad issue, and obviously there's there's stuff going on there. But then is there issues around, is there any way to use the private model to, can private citizens have bighorn sheep, or is there a rule with TPWS that they can't do that?
No, they can't do that.
Yeah.
It's been ruled several times through the Supreme Court of Texas. The wildlife in Texas belong to the citizens of Texas,
Right.
not properly but as a group.
Contrary to the North American management model. So there is all these invasives that are in there, for example, aoudad and a whole bunch of other stuff, but that's because they're not they're not free range, they're not local
right.
invasive species. So,
and kind of one of the things that complicates the sheep and aoudad issue is, the aoudad are a non-native invasive exotic species. So there's no special hunting tag, no season, no quota, no limit. You can hunt aoudad 365 days a year, kill as many as you want, and all you need is a Texas hunting license. So landowners that have those aoudad get anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 a hunt. The hunt lasts, I think they book them for 3 days, and you're probably gone on day 2. And you can do that all year round. So now you've got a big, huge financial incentive for the landowners for the hunting part of it. And it's kind of divided up originally into 3 groups. The landowners on one end, man, I hate aoudad. They're invasive. They tear up everything. They're spreading disease. Come take them out. And so they're real aggressive, and they try to get rid of all the aoudad off their land. The group on the other end, hey, I'm making a lot of money off of this. This is making more than anything else. Leave the aoudad alone on my place. Okay, we understand that. And then the group in the middle, which I think is kind of spread in each direction. The group in the middle, those landowners are like, yeah, we're hunting some trophy aoudad, but when we're not hunting those trophy males, we're busy taking out females. Mm-hmm. And so that helps. It's not going to be it's not enough to make the problem go away. TBS sponsored some research looking at the population dynamics of audads, and they're sexually mature at 9 months of age, so the females can start breeding at 9 months old. They usually breed twice a year, and most of the time have twins. And so in that same modeling, in order to keep the aoudad population steady state, not letting it increase but not decreasing either, keeping it exactly where it is, you would have to take out 80% of the ewes every year.
Wow.
And so you figure there's, just to make the math easy, 80,000 aoudad in Texas. Figure half of those are females, 80% of that. So they're not killing 32,000 ewes a year. So just to break it down into kind of some eye-opening math, that was sort of the numbers that they came up with.
Wow. So yeah, that's really complicated. There's a lot of issues going on.
A lot of moving parts in all this. Yes, sir.
And then there's the landowner issue, the market forces. I'm sure there's other people that want to protect aoudad as well. There's probably not just the hunters or the outfitters. There's probably some special interest groups that are looking out for them as well in some capacity, I would imagine.
Not a whole lot. There's some, but they have some aoudad they put into some places in South Texas that they moved them from, just not from other places, but from Texas within Texas. And they kind of watch that little herd, sort of a pet herd, but there's not like a WSF version of aoudad.
Good. Okay. Glad to hear that.
Which is
at
great.
Least
Yeah.
There's some hope there anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the evolution of this project. So, how did this all start? Was this driven exclusively by TBS? Obviously, the Wild Sheep Foundation's jumped on board and through the grant and aid process, and there's other benefactors too. But did you guys drive the bus on this, or how did it get started, Sam?
It came up through the Parks and Wildlife, through our sheep committee. Forlon Hernandez, like I said, is the program director, our sheep program director, and he was really the driving force of all this. And then he worked with Cesar Mendez, who is in Texas Parks and Wildlife. Froy and the sheep program are on the wildlife side, and then the Franklin Mountains, since it's a state park, they're on the park side. And you'd think, oh, okay, it's the same thing, but it's two almost distinctly separate entities. So it took a lot of work from the wildlife side and even more work from the park side with Cesar to kind of get this off the ground and running. But they saw this, like I said, they did those surveys and habitat assessment, and it's like, hey, this is a good place for sheep. And then they both had a ton of work to do to try to get the higher ups on each branch of the Parks and Wildlife on board and get that going.
Very cool. Let's talk a little bit about the funding element of it. So obviously, this is a huge undertaking. What did the capture look like? Actually, let's talk about the funding and then what the machinations of the actual capture and the transplant.
Okay. For the funding, we submitted a GIA to Wild Sheep Foundation with support from obviously from Parks and Wildlife. Like I said, TBS and TPWD, that's the biggest partnership in all of the sheep in Texas historically. And then now with this, you throw in Wild Sheep Foundation, several chapters and affiliates, in addition to the main Wild Sheep Foundation, the Texas Panhandle chapter of DSC, Water for Wildlife. I mean, the list goes on and on. And so when we saw that we needed to do this translocation and got it kind of set up and approved, the Franklin Mountains have like, 4 or 5 natural springs. And there's one of those that's pretty good year round, depending on the weather. And so there was a need to have some water in those mountains. And so every year, TBS, we do a water project and build a guzzler, put a couple of guzzlers somewhere. So this past March, we put 2 guzzlers in the Franklin Mountains, way up on the tops for the sheep and for the mule deer, and all the other wildlife in that park will benefit from that. The guzzlers were paid for by TBS. Water for Wildlife, we put in a grant to them with the help of Wild Sheep Foundation, got money from them. And then actually the Idaho chapter of Wild Sheep Foundation, the Washington chapter of Wild Sheep Foundation, the Oregon chapter of Wild Sheep Foundation all kicked in money to help. And then the Panhandle chapter of the Dallas Safari Club kicked in a bunch of money too. So they helped pay for the guzzlers. And in March, like I said, we built both of those in March and we're ready. We were going to start translocating sheep. And then there was a little bit of delay from the government regulation and parks and paperwork and red tape, kind of delayed it. Then we're into the lambing season. Then we put it off. So, okay, we'll do it after surveys. And then during survey season, we're furthest south. So helicopters were all booked. And so if anything happens anywhere, it has just kind of that trickle down effect. So we got delayed again and finally had our translocation December 3rd and 4th of this year.
So 2 weeks ago. That's awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
So a project like this, I think you guys transplanted or translocated 77 critters. What kind of money are we talking about? Is it millions, hundreds of thousands, tens? What are we talking about financially?
Hundreds of thousands. Because there's on Elephant Mountain where our source herd is, we had to do a lot of surveys and make sure that they're up to carrying capacity, and we had, the sheep to take off of there to begin with. So we did those surveys. So that was some money for helicopter time there. And then for the translocation, a big expense was a helicopter time for the net gunners, all the supplies for testing. We had help with Texas Tech University, a bunch of research from them. Some of the researchers from Borderlands Research Institute at Sul Ross University helped with all the research stuff. And then, like I said, we put in a GIA to Wild Sheep Foundation, and they graciously funded the entire thing as one of what they call a legacy project. That grant was for $280-something thousand.
That's a huge undertaking. Glenn, do you want to jump in a little bit about sort of how the GIA process works and how this was a priority project for the foundation?
Yeah, you bet. Well, again, just kudos to all the folks in Texas, TBS and Texas Park and Wildlife and all of their partners there. I mean, I played a small role in this conversation, but I do want to rewind just a bit and what Sam was talking about and highlight the strength of our chapter and affiliate network that we have. And Sam and I happened to be on the phone just talking through the grant process last year, and he just mentioned, we want to put one or two guzzlers in, and I'm like, well, and he was asking, should I put it in the grant? I'm like, well, let's just make it happen, and literally, we kept going and had our conversation about the grant process and the timeline of it. And I think it was the next day I called Sam back and said, hey, I've got, I think the number was 25 grand for one of the guzzlers. So I got WSF is on board for 10. And I called our friends, Grant, Garrett Grant with Washington Wild Sheep Foundation, and said, hey, you in for 5? Called Josh Miller and Jimmy Warner at Idaho Wild Sheep. They're in for 5. Larry Jacobs with the Oregon chapter, they're in for 5. And, in 24 hours, we had that guzzler funded. I'm like, check that box. What's the next obstacle? And he couldn't believe it. And, that's just the kind of network that we have. And when there's a time of need, those chapters and affiliates just step up and make it happen. So beyond that, our grant and aid process typically runs the month of July. And about 3 years ago, we really made some changes to it to really encourage our wildlife partners to really think big, think bold. At the top end of this, Kyle, you mentioned my board phrase of doing epic shit, and that's really what we wanted to focus on. And so, as Sam mentioned, just the size and scope of this project makes it what we call a legacy project. And then we go in and seek some other partners to help cover that funding as well. So, and then, for us, the applications are submitted in July. We have a professional resources advisory board that goes over them and works with conservation staff with Kevin Hurley, and they make a recommendation to the board of directors, and we vote on it. Usually late August, early September, and then that money is appropriated. So, but it was a long process. We knew, the T's were going to be crossed, the I's dotted. We knew this is a critical project in Texas, so it was easy to fund. I mean, just again, they did their homework, and the why this was a critical project and helping sustain and eventually grow the desert sheep population in the state of Texas. So again, hats off. I'm just humbled to that, the Texas folks let us be part of it. We're honored to hopefully turn the tide and swing that pendulum in the right direction so we can get this trend for increasing populations of desert sheep in Texas back where it needs to be.
Yeah, well said, Glenn. Yeah, you talk about the chapter and affiliate network and our wild sheep family, and there's so many examples over and over and over, and that's a classic example there. Just phenomenal support and different chapter and affiliates stepping up and looking after, and it gives you a lot of confidence moving forward, knowing that if there's ever a real problem, that we've got brothers and sisters out there that are going to come to each other's assistance and help out.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Glenn said, I just called him to say, hey, should I try to make this guzzler project? Should I put that in the grant? And he's like, let me call you back. He called me back the next day and said, yeah, don't worry about it. We've got that paid for. So he makes it sound like he's like, oh, yeah, okay. I just made a couple of phone calls, but that was impressive that got done that fast. And I've said this before to a lot of people and at a lot of places, but the Wild Sheep Foundation, by funding this project, most likely literally saved the sheep in Texas. Because I told you about that trajectory of our numbers, just doing a nosedive. And by doing this, we can breathe a little sigh of relief for now that we've got a second source herd set up. Another thing that with that legacy project and that money that they gave us, we talked a little bit about this, I think, on our last podcast that I was on with you, Kyle, where in the United States we have a Pittman-Robertson Act, which is a conservation act. There's it was passed in Congress. I can't remember in the past. Glenn, you may jump in there if you remember the year it was passed. But what it is, the state agencies can submit money to the Pittman proposals to the Pittman-Robertson Act, and if it all correlates and jives, then you get a 3-to-1 match. So all of this $280,000+ qualifies for that PR match, and so now we'll have 280,000 plus their 3 times that added to it to go straight into the sheep program in Texas. So that's huge, and that money, that program is paid for by conservationists, but mainly or exclusively, that's all put on the backs of hunters. There's an 11% excise tax anytime you buy a hunting license, ammo, rifle, fishing gear, whatever. And that 11% excise tax that's put on all that stuff goes into the Pittman-Robertson Fund.
Yeah, it's an awesome success story, Sam. And from the TBS side of things, can you talk about, is this kind of the biggest project that you've been involved in since you've been involved with TBS? Obviously, you talked back to the early days of the organization, the Red Duke days, but since you've been involved, is this the biggest thing you guys have done so far?
It is. Since I've been involved, this is by far the biggest. Like I said, we have a lot of partners that we rely heavily on. Parks and Wildlife being our main partners, they rely on us, we rely on them. Wild Sheep Foundation is definitely one of those partners that, hey, we need some help. They always jump in and help us. Chapter and affiliates help us. So anytime something comes up and one of our chapter brothers or sisters needs something, then we always try to help them out too. It's really kind of cool to see that at work, at the chapter and affiliate summit, or in Reno, or just year round, just phone calls back and forth. And hey, I've got a problem. What do you need? Like Glenn did, call the next day. Yeah, you don't have a problem anymore. Take care of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't been in the game near as long as you guys have. But I just feel like and it just keeps building and building on itself. There's more and more giving and more camaraderie, more and more. We're not looking in isolation, like, oh, how are we going to look after our, this herd, or that, we're looking at as a community. It's stronger than it's ever been. And I think that leadership's there from the foundation, in my opinion.
Definitely, yes.
Glenn, thoughts?
Well, yes, absolutely. And that kind of synergy is that's what our wild sheep needs right now. I mean, we were able to get on the phone call. Texas was in need, and we solved the problem. And we want to make sure that money's not the obstacle. And that's why that network is just so critical. And I think we all recognize that there's going to be different times of need for each state or province or whatever that has sheep. At some point, you're going to be the one that's going to be, with your hat in hand and your hand out, and everyone's just ready and willing. All you have to do is ask. That's why we have our fundraisers, and that's why we work so hard, and we have, really when Gray was hired by the Wild Sheep Foundation 16 or so years ago, this one tent, one campfire. And I know the three of us and our roles with WSF and our chapter and affiliate standing committee that we have, we've all played leadership roles in that. Sam, you're leading it now. I have as well. And it's just unbelievably critical to that resource. And it's exciting and motivating that when you pick it up and say, Josh, what are you in for? You in for 5? And yep. Well, let me send an email. Let me call a couple, board members, and we're good. And then, they vote on it when they have their next meeting, and it's a done deal. And yeah. Sam and his team can look at the bigger obstacles that they needed to focus on to make it happen. And it's just super powerful, super motivating, humbling. And again, thank everyone who played a role, not just in Texas, but any other similar type of wildlife conservation, wild sheep conservation projects that we've had.
Well, this is an amazing one. I look back and I can't think of too many translocations in the past, whatever, 5, 10 years. There's just, there has been stuff, but like the magnitude of this one, this is a big one. And there's a lot of energy. so exciting. Sam, talk us through. You got the funding. You knew you got the GIA approval in August, September. I guess it was in September that you found out. Maybe just talk about what was the last couple weeks like that. What was it like on the ground? Like talk about the how they were captured, the how far they were transported, the release. Talk about that sort of stuff, the boots on the ground
So,
stuff.
this, like I said, this was kind of we looked at it as one of possibly our last chance to establish a disease-free source herd. And so we've got the spot, good habitat, we've got the funding, and it wasn't just your ordinary translocation in Texas. Usually that to translocate sheep, they use 15 to 20 people. At this translocation, there was 120 people. So lots of eyes, lots of cameras, lots of microphones. So it's not like we didn't have enough pressure to, saying, hey, we got to get this established. Now you're doing it in front of a big, huge, basically statewide or wider audience. So that put a little bit of extra pressure on things. Our Parks and Wildlife guys, man, they handled that like champs. Everybody had a job. Everybody felt included and involved. And so we met on Monday, the 2nd of December, and had our orientation meeting, and then in Alpine, and then showed up at Elephant Mountain, which is 30 miles outside of Alpine, and set up. Sun came up, helicopter took off and started catching sheep. And so the helicopter would fly up, net gun a sheep. One of the muggers would jump out of the helicopter, go take him out of the net, put a mask on him, hobble him, and put him in a sack. The helicopter would go, after they dropped him off, would go and net gun another one. The second one would do it, and then to a third one, net gun that mugger jumped out. When he dropped that one off, he'd go back and pick up the first sheep, long line it, get the mugger in, go to the second one, get the mugger in, hook up the second one. So every time they were coming back, they were bringing 3 sheep at a time usually. And at first it was pretty fast because it didn't matter ewes or rams or whatever, that we just needed sheep. They had a set proportion of ewes to rams and everything that they wanted. We ended up, like you said, catching and processing 77 sheep. So 37 rams and 40 ewes. So once they land with those, then the animal handlers, they go over, take them off the long line, take them out of the bag, take a sheep, put it over on one of the processing tables. We had 4 stations set up. Each processing table has a team, and each one of those processing tables, there was a vet there to administer medicines and things like that. So constantly checking the temperature, monitoring the temperature, nasal swabs, tonsil swabs, blood samples, ear clips, an overall health assessment and aging. And if it was a female, they got an ultrasound to see if they were pregnant or not. And then once they're done, all those samples, put them in a trailer. We caught almost 60 sheep Tuesday, so it was a big day. There was a cutoff put at 1:30 in the afternoon. So all of the samples, disease testing samples that we gathered up to 1:30 that afternoon were taken to the airport in Alpine, put on a private jet, and flown to Waddle in Washington State to have those Movi tests done overnight. And then the sheep were kept in trailers, and the next morning finished off capturing the rest of the sheep on Wednesday, and then sent the trailers on their way with fingers crossed, and then wait for the lab results to come in. And when they all came in clean, great, just keep going. If they would have come in with some positive, they would have turned around and we'd have done something different. But all those ones from Tuesday have come back clean. So we sent all 77 sheep over there. And to my knowledge, right now, there's not been any of them come back positive for Movi. So
That's a huge undertaking, eh?
It was massive. Yeah. And I mean, everybody from people holding syringes and handing it to the vets it's pretty cool because everybody had a role. And then to trailer those from Alpine to El Paso, that's like a 3 or 3.5 hour drive. So it's a haul. And so drove 6 trailers full of sheep over to that 3.5 hours through El Paso, up into the Franklin Mountains. And you get up to the Franklin Mountain State Park to see the release. There's 600 people there. 600 people. I mean, every news crew in El Paso and other places, newspapers, freelance writers. I mean, and then a lot of just citizens from El Paso. 600 people there to see that.
Wow.
It was
That's
actually
insane.
pretty emotional.
Yeah.
You have, Sam, any of those news stories, video clips, or links to those that you could share? It'd be great to.
I do. Yeah, we've got, well, when we first set this up, part of the thing that I put in the grant, not to be paid for in the grant, but just kind of as a, hey, we're doing this as a selling point, was Texas Bighorn Society. We work closely with Perennial Productions. They've done some film and video stuff for us before, done a couple of our work projects. And so we hired them, and they were at our work project back in March, taking pictures, making videos, doing interviews. They've interviewed people, some of the older, more original, the original group of TBS volunteers. And so they're putting together a big, epic sort of documentary. And I found out the other day that that's actually going to get to be played in the Full Curl Cinema in Reno. And then, so there was that film crew. Texas Parks and Wildlife had a huge film crew. Bass Pro, I think they had a film crew there. Dan Cabela with his TV show was there and did interviews and a lot of filming. So there, like I said, there was a lot of cameras and microphones on everybody at the translocation and at the release also. And the city of El Paso, I kind of failed to mention this back when I was talking about leading up to the translocation. We had 3 different meetings in El Paso, sort of public outreach meetings. So invite the public to come. They hear the spiel of the sheep program, what's happening, where we are now, why we chose Franklin Mountains, and gave them a chance to understand it, to ask questions. They asked some hard questions, and get everybody on board. And actually, the city of El Paso was very welcoming to the whole idea, which was evident by having 600 citizens of El Paso at the release.
That's great.
But yeah, we got a bunch of that video that's being processed. There's something on the Texas Parks and Wildlife website. We've got a little bit on our website, but probably next week we're going to have a whole bunch more photos and videos and things like that.
Super cool. So Sam, you had your 4 teams there, and you guys were working on them. So all these rams or sheep were colored, right? They all still have colors.
Yes, that was the thing. Put a color on every one of them.
Okay, so you did all the tests, everything, and then were they released into a pen, and then just or talk about how they got from there onto the trailer.
Off of the table, once we're done, the data recorder goes down and makes sure everything on the list is checked. Yeah, we've got samples done. Everything's done. Record how much, if they had to have some midazolam, how much banamine, any of the medicines they got, how much of that, and then record the age. So all that data. Once that sheet was finished and we were done with the sheep, then you just pick the sheep up, walk it about 30 yards, and hand it to the Parks and Wildlife guys, and they put them in the designated trailers. And they were held in the trailers overnight and monitored closely. There were people watching those sheep all night long, making sure they didn't, have any health issues.
And you guys were taking the temperatures just like for stress, and if they were getting too stressed, you'd take them off the table, you'd let them go or something.
No, if you put that thermometer in, you're monitoring that, and the protocol was if it got to 103.5 or 104, I can't remember which, then the vet would give some banamine to help reduce the temperature, and that stuff works really fast.
Okay. And then you guys drove out and you released them. So you got the results back from Waddle, and you're like, yeah, clear to go. And then you did 60 some the first day, right? So
right. But all the sheep that we caught the second day all 77 sheep were taken and released.
Okay. Yeah. And then so you guys just drive up with horse trailers, open up the tailgate, and off they go?
It's pretty much the size of it, man. We went into the state park, backed up into this one, there's in that state, it's not a real big state park, but they have all these little picnic areas where you can go up. That makes a little turnaround and a little parking area. So just pulled up, made a U, back the trailer up, opened the gate, and man, they just took off running straight up into the mountains.
Awesome. So now what's the monitoring process? Obviously you got collars on them and just keeping an eye on things, seeing how they're going. Is that the process?
Yes, sir. They all have collars. So, you monitor for the first week for any of that, translocation or transport myopathy that can cause some death. And so far, knock on wood, we've had no deaths. They're all collared. They're all released. So they're looked at daily, all day. And at first, they all went up. And then there was a little group that kind of came down low, and then they've gone back up. And so all of them have kind of thinned out across the tops of the mountains. They've actually found both water guzzlers. And then there was one ram that on the north end of the Franklins, as you get to the end of that range, it sort of drops down. And then there's this long flat as you go towards New Mexico. And one of those sheep got down, not in the flat, but got on the other side, on that down slope, and hung around over there for half a day and then went back up. And there's a highway between that flat and New Mexico.
So they're doing their job. They're doing what they're supposed to. No surprises so far.
So far, it's all good. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
And that long 3.5 hour journey for them didn't seem to bother them too much.
A 3.5 hour drive in Texas that's just across town, right?
Yeah. There's kind of a funny story about that.
Teed it up for you, buddy.
Yeah, there you go. So you leave Alpine, you leave Elephant Mountain, it's 30 minutes into Alpine, and then 3.5 hours to El Paso. So I left Elephant Mountain before any sheep or anything else. I had a passenger with me, so we go by the hotel. I get my stuff out of my room. They get the stuff out of their room. We check out, and thinking, man, we're ahead of the trailers, not a problem in the world. We're good. We're going to go see this release. And just as I'm pulling out of Alpine, Freud called me and he goes, "Hey, I just let you know that all the labs came back fine." So, all right, good. High fives. And I said, "Great. Have you left Elephant Mountain?" He said, "Man, we're in Valentine," which is a little over an hour in front of me. So the last trailer is an hour in front of me. So I'm like, oh, heck, we got to have to go to catch up. So I opened her up and I'm driving. And you get to the town of Marfa, Texas, and it goes from 70 to 30 in about a 30-foot span. And the city cop likes sitting right there. So he pulled me over and we visited for a while. He did his paperwork and I got my ticket. I get back in and I'm just kind of creeping through town. I get to the edge of the town, man, I open it back up, take off, and I have a radar detector, and it went off. So I slowed down and I went zooming past a sheriff, literally 5 minutes after I just got a ticket. So he pulls in behind me and he's kind of following me. He didn't really speed up and pull me over, but he kept shooting me with his radar. So I didn't know if he had me or not. So in a little bit, he sped up and pulled me over. And he gets out, walks up, "Get out, bring your driver's license." So I get out, give him that, and he's explaining to me why I shouldn't be speeding in the nicest way possible. I mean, he was really kind of giving me a hard time. And he said, "All right, wait here." So he goes back into his truck, and I'm watching him, and he's clicking away on his keyboard. And I seen him lean forward into his keyboard and lift his glasses up. And he's looking at his keyboard. He puts his glasses back down, and he opens his door. He doesn't get out. He just opens his door and sticks his head out and says, "Did you just get a ticket?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You didn't think I would know this fast?" I said, "Well, I figured when you started typing on that keyboard, you'd find out." So he came out. He said, "You just didn't learn a damn thing, did you?" I said, "Well, yes, sir, I think I did this time." And so a little bit more of a sermon from him. And then finally, he just handed me my driver's license and said, you really need to slow down. When you're in Presidio County, you need to slow down. Now you get up to Jim Ned County, they don't care. Nobody patrols there. You can do whatever you want to, but in my county, you better slow down. So we took off.
Did you tell him that you're trying to catch up to a release?
Yeah, and he said, "Oh yeah, I've read about that. How'd that go?" And so I'm kind of looking at my watch and explaining it as fast as I can. He's like, "Yeah, that's pretty cool." Now I think that might have helped get me the warning. I don't know. But then, so man, I drove like a wild man and as I'm going through the mountains, I missed a call from Foy, so I get through the mountains on the other side, and I call him. He's like, "Man, where are you?" I said, "I'm about a quarter mile from the gate." He said, "Really?" He said, "We're just pulling through the gate with the last trailer." So I pulled in there and parked, and I didn't see the very first trailer emptied, but I saw 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 emptied.
That's
great.
that's great. You made it. It was expensive release for you though, eh?
A little bit, yeah.
That's a great story, Sam. I appreciate you sharing it with us. And I promise that Kyle and I won't tell anyone.
I'm sure.
Our
Yeah.
secret is safe.
It's
with
okay
us.
it's okay to say it on this podcast because Canadians, what do they care? They don't care if I speak.
This episode is sponsored by our conservation partner, Frontiersman Gear. Thank you, Sitka Gear and Frontiersman Gear, for investing in healthy wildlife and sustainable ecosystems.
So, talk a little bit about, I guess, the impact this has on you, Sam. Like, I can only imagine from my perspective here in BC, if we were to do something like this, a big translocation like this, and it was successful, just kind of how I'd feel. I think it'd be pretty emotional, pretty uplifting, and also like for your membership, you think of all the people that the volunteer work, the donations, the effort everyone puts in all the time, and to sort of get that sort of reward. Talk a little bit about the emotional aspect of it for you.
That release the whole thing was pretty emotional, but that release was very emotional. There was a lot of tears flowing and people hugging and rightfully so. I kind of joked at the top of the program here about, "Hey, do you want to be president of TBS?" I say that because I've been in that office for 5 years. I'm sure people are ready for me to go, but it's actually a very easy job because I have a fabulous board of directors that are so supportive of all things wild sheep, not just Texas. Kind of goes back to that whole chapter and affiliate attitude we talked about early. My board of directors, or our board of directors, really gets that. And all of our membership, we have fundraisers every year, and this is what we raise money for. I think in TBS, we have 900-ish members, and about 500 or 600 of those are life members. So the people we have as members are committed. And the next day, sent out a little email blast to our membership, kind of describing what happened and the results. And 80% of those, I didn't tell you this, 80% of those 40 ewes were pregnant. So we'll hopefully have a nice lamb crop up there in the Franklins in a couple of months.
How's the predator situation up there, Sam? Is it a pretty good place to drop them?
Yeah, that kind of goes back to that workup pre-transplant or pre-release, looking at not just aoudad, but also at predators. I'm sure there's cats in there. There's a graduate student at University of Texas, El Paso, that is doing some mountain lion research, and she has set up camera traps all through that park and those mountains, and so far doesn't have any cats on her cameras. That I'm not saying there's not any, there probably is, because they've had like I said, those mountains go right down into town, and they've had some sightings down at the bottom in town. But that will be monitored very closely. Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, fingers crossed. Glen, you've been on the board for 9 years, and you've been chair the last it's been your 3rd year as chair now, and there's been some amazing things done, and to me this is top of the heap. It has to be up there and in the top handful of ones. Talk about sort of how this feels for you as the chair of the board and your 9 years of commitment to wild sheep.
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, it's just there's very few opportunities that we have to do something like this, something as meaningful and as impactful as what this was in Texas. So again, hats off to our partners and our donors that helped. I know it was mentioned, but Cabela's Bass Pro, Campfire Club, some of the chapter and affiliates that stepped up and helped contribute to fund that. And again, we just talked about it a few minutes ago, just the power of our membership, the power of the Wild Sheep family and our chapter and affiliates. And in this situation, Texas and Desert Sheep in Texas were the beneficiary of it. So, yeah, it's exciting to see that something that you can look back on in the future and say, I had a very small part of that. Again, a very small part for myself, but it's been said on this a couple of times, about doing epic shit. And I want to hats off to Sam and all of your crew. And you shared it in Calgary when you gave us an update. You called it DSET, doing epic shit in Texas. You guys pull it off the way only Texans can. So thanks for letting us be a part of it. And yeah, I'm anxious to hear in a couple months. I was going to ask you what when your lambing season is there. I knew it was different than ours here in Hell's Canyon, but really excited to hear how they do. And hopefully it's going to give you guys another valuable nursery herd that you can use as you help restore and solve some of these disease issues that you have.
Yeah, we couldn't have done it without all of our partners, Parks and Wildlife, Wild Sheep Foundation, all the chapters and affiliates, and like I said, Panhandle chapter, DSC, the Bass Pro, Cabela's, Campfire. I mean, like Glenn said, that list goes on. And, it was kind of cool being on an applicant for a GIA last year, and then this year being on the board and going through that process to see how all that actually works and how it's awarded and the work. And it's not just, they need money here. They need money. I mean, there's a lot of thought and a lot of work that goes into it by PRAB and by the Wild Sheep Foundation board of directors and Gray. And I mean, it's a huge thing. And like I said, without Wild Sheep Foundation, we probably wouldn't have sheep in Texas next year.
Right on. On that note, what's on the radar? Is there any you got any other epic shit going on, or what? Are you gonna do anything else?
We're going to monitor these sheep pretty closely. That's number one. The other thing that's kind of going on, one little thing, every time we build a guzzler, we put cameras on them. And then those cameras transmit. We've got a link on our website. So you can go through and hit guzzler, and it pulls up all the guzzlers we've built, or most of them. And you click on that, and it's got a real-time camera that's motion detected. So when an animal, whether it be a sheep or whatever, comes to those guzzlers, it starts taking pictures. And we've got cameras that we're going to put up order those, and we're going to have those up on those guzzlers on the Franklin Mountain guzzlers shortly. The next kind of big thing that we've got on our radar is, like I said earlier, this isn't the answer to everything, but it helps us, breathe a little bit for a while. One of the next things we're going to do is continue to work on our aoudad management. We actually have had some more private landowners reach out and say, hey, we need some help with this aoudad control. And so Foy contacted me, and I'm like, man, if that's what they're thinking, let's give them whatever they need right now. So we continue to do some aerial gunning. One of the things that has proven to be pretty successful that Foy, the Parks and Wildlife guys, started are building big corral traps. So you build those and put some alfalfa or some bait in it, and then those aoudad come in, and you can monitor it remotely. And then when it gets full, you get 40 or 50 aoudad, you hit a button and it drops the gate, and then you can go through and take care of those animals. One of the things that we're going to do, that we've been talking about doing, working with Dr. Kate Hyvert, who's the Rocky Crate Chair at Waddle, and with the Working Dogs for Conservation also, is when we do some of these corral traps, is getting as much data from those animals as we can. So what we'll do is, once we catch them in that corral trap, is we'll sample them and give samples for Waddle to run their normal assays on. We'll run some in-field biomeme testing on it. We'll let the working dogs for conservation do the same thing. And then all that data we gather, we can compare it and see how well each testing method works. And hey, this one works, or if they all work the same, or one works better. And then that'll be very useful moving forward. If you could use those dogs in the field or the in-field biomeme or whatever. So that's coming up.
Sam,
Very
did you
cool.
run the biomeme down
What's
there?
that?
Did you test it? The biomeme did.
We did not this time. The only thing, we didn't, we came up, there was some discussion right at the last minute about using the working dogs for conservation, but everything was kind of set. And so we just stuck with our original protocol, but no, we didn't use any biomeme this time.
Gotcha.
But that's the plan, is to, they need as many samples as they can to validate those assays. And so we'll use it on aoudad. And then next time we move some sheep, then we can use them on that as well.
Listening to Sam, you're talking about some of these ranchers that are open to some removal. I mean, to me, that sounds like a great auction item, right? 3 days in Texas. It's an aoudad buffet, all you can shoot. Huh?
Yeah, we can, we've talked about that, but there's some legal issues with some of that. I mean, Parks and Wildlife guys, they can do it, but having private citizens do it in the parks or on the state land, you can't really do that. Some of these private landowners, they're open to it. So there's actually been a few talks about that.
Yeah, that's what I was referencing. Some of these private landowners, these ranchers that have had enough.
Yeah. And like
you let me know when you're selling that.
Okay. It's not just a disease issue, but those aoudad, man, they're, for as much trouble as they cause, you have to kind of admire them because they're so resilient. They go from browsers to grazers and back, and man, they don't really need much water. They get a lot of the water they need just from the plants that they eat. And they're like cockroaches, man. They're going to be around forever, I think.
Crazy. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. I guess for our listeners, this is a great opportunity to shout out the great work that Texas Bighorn Society's done and maybe pick up a membership. I'm a Proud Life member, a great organization doing great work in Texas. And so anyone that's not a member, get over to just Texas Bighorn Society. I'm sure if you Google it, you can find it. Hey, Sam?
Yes, sir. TexasBighornSociety.org.
Awesome. There you go. So sign up. You guys are going to have a booth at Sheep Week. What's your booth
Absolutely,
number? Do you
we'll have a booth there. You can swing by and visit and sign up.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. So awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sam. Thank you, Glenn. Sheep Week's 4 weeks out. So you're going to roll back from Pakistan, Glenn, and we're all going to be down in Sheep Week and doing our thing.
Yeah, you bet. I'm going to have a nice Karachi suntan. It'll be about 80 degrees down there. It's no big deal for Sam, but it's winter where I live. And yeah, really excited. We're going to have a great convention. Everything looks to be just off the charts in terms of reg and exhibitors, more than we've ever had. And, we made just a couple shameless plugs here. We made some pretty significant changes to our raffle program. And one of them we're highlighting from our FNAWS raffle of the 4 sheep that we're giving away is we're selling 500 tickets at $500 a piece for a British Columbia stone sheep hunt. And as you well know, and we've talked about it before, Wild Sheep Foundation has made a $1 million commitment to help stone sheep in British Columbia. And so we hope that the folks in attendance at the sheep show recognize that commitment and want to be part of that and purchase one of those tickets. And let's get up north and do some epic shit in British Columbia. I don't know what word that spells, but anyway, we're going to make it happen. And yeah, it's going to be a great week.
I see Sam doing the math there. It's doing some thinking on it. Yeah. Awesome. No, fantastic. Can't wait for Sheep Week. And again, yeah, that's phenomenal. That $1 million commitment to a stone sheep. So phenomenal work that the board of directors and the Wild Sheep Foundation continues to do. And yeah, no better place to celebrate it than in Reno. And for those that screwed up and don't have their tickets, so going to tell you Friday and Saturday night, it's going to be pretty disappointing for you because we're sold out. So yeah, but still lots of great stuff going on. And yeah, it's going to be one for the books for sure. So,
That's
and
right.
I heard Landrus is buying whiskey for everybody that shows up, is what I've been told. So
All week, man, all week.
I got that email too,
awesome. We'll see
and
you,
forwarded
Jensen.
it to several people.
Sounds like a deal.
Gentlemen, we'll see you all in Reno. Thanks so much for being here today. Thank you for all you do for wild sheep. And again, Sam, congratulations. Glenn, congratulations on an amazing transplant in the Franklin Mountains. Phenomenal.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you guys. Thanks for having us.